Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I am your host, Rico Muhammad. My good friend next to me, that's Mr. Chuck Snow. And this is the Rates and Lanes podcast. If you guys would do us a huge favor, if you would please like, share, and subscribe to the show, it would help us out tremendously, and we would be greatly appreciative of you doing so. It doesn't cost you a dime. You can hit the little bell icon if you're on YouTube to get notifications of whenever we post new content. You'll be notified that new content is up and available. So if you would do that, we would appreciate that as well. And without any much further ado, we want to welcome you guys in. I have to apologize. You're probably seeing my finger go in front of the camera. I'm trying to get over it.
Magic.
I'm trying to get over into some technology so that I can share some information with you guys. But Chuck, how are you today?
We're doing great. I actually got to spend the weekend in one of my favorite places, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh yeah,
A great spot. It's got issues though. It's the crowds are dwindling, and as people don't have as much money to gamble, and it's gotten very expensive. It really is. You really see the difference in price going back every year, every 6 months for a weekend. It's just gotten prohibitive.
where'd you stay at when you were there? I forgot to ask you that, Chuck.
I just stay at the Four Seasons, and it's there's no gambling there, but it's
Ah,
quiet. I want to be in a place that's quiet. We're not big gamblers. I
okay.
figure I gambled enough being in trucking for as long as I was. I didn't need to push the luck. We did go to the couple we were with had never gambled at all, and we're not big gamblers either. But I found a casino downtown called El Cortez that still takes coins.
Oh wow. So
But
do you ever go down to Fremont Street when you're in
yeah,
Vegas?
we did the last time we were there with the same people who had never been there before. So we walked down there. It's fun. It really is. It's fun. It's hokey.
No place quite like Vegas, I tell you.
There isn't.
New Orleans doing Mardi Gras may come close.
Yeah, but I was going to actually one of these days to see if Jimmy Mack will join us. The thing about Las Vegas is the big parties, the real parties happen. Those are the private parties, I
Oh yeah.
understand. And you need to know somebody to just stand on the street with a hurricane in your hand. I think it gets pretty boring pretty quickly. But it's these private parties that are supposed to be epic. I've been hearing about those since I was in high school.
Well,
That's
I don't know. Sometimes with these private parties and with everything going on, might put you on one of them quote unquote lists that you might not want to get something.
I'm good with that. I'm really good. You have a relative in New Orleans, don't you?
No, well, my girlfriend has some. She's originally from New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah. So she has a lot of family down that way. So to get and I'm going to switch over and get back to the trucking side of things here real quickly. And I may get on, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to be honest with you right now. I got a lot of stuff on my mind. I might get on a little bit of a soapbox.
That's okay.
I haven't had a chance to really formulate complete thoughts around a lot of stuff that's bouncing around in my head, but there is a hell of a lot of stuff that's going on in our industry right now, and I got tons and tons and tons of thoughts, and I don't want to. I want to try to get them as concisely as I possibly can, but right now, everybody knows, we got a little conflict going on overseas. I was noticing. I just watched yesterday. If you're a member of NASDAQ, of course, you get fuel updates whenever the price of fuel is going up or down.
Right.
Last night and tonight, we're going to see about a 20%. I mean, not 20%. Excuse me, a 20 cents per gallon jump in the rate of diesel fuel.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Right now, we're showing that the average U.S. price for diesel fuel is checking in at $3.81 per gallon. That is up 10 cents from the previous week. So like I said, last night, I noticed that price of diesel is going to jump from today and tonight about 20 cents per gallon, which is significant. So you need to make sure that you are updating your cost per mile matrix, that you are making sure that you're accounting for that. Of course, we know that the rates are starting to stabilize, will look a lot better than what they previously were, but you need to make sure that that is something that you're keeping an account of. And speaking of rates, the national spot market rates for dry vans is checking in at $2.38 per mile. That is 4 cents lower than the previous week. Flatbed seems to have hit its stride. We're showing flatbeds checking in at $2.79 per mile on average on the spot market. These are the line haul rates that include the fuel surcharge. These are all in spot market rates that I'm reading off to you guys. So it's checking in at $2.79 per mile on average. That is 9 cents higher than the previous week.
Wow.
And reefers are still holding strong, checking in at $2.81 per mile on average. It's showing that that's about 9 cents lower than the average from last week. And so, like I was saying, there's a lot of stuff that's been coming down the pike. I haven't had a chance. We are recording this show on Tuesday, so there is a very important court case that is going on right now. We should be getting some kind of information coming back off of that. We have all type of stuff that's coming up down the pike when it comes to, there's a potential of a Delilah's law that's supposed to be going into that may or may not be going into effect. And from the accounts of what I've heard from the likes of like Noel Perry and economists of that ilk, if they're saying that if that actually gets pushed through, that could eliminate up to 600,000 CDL drivers.
Wow. Well, you know what? If it gets rid of 600,000 bad CDL drivers, then I think it's a win. It depends who gets cut.
Absolutely. And what I was saying earlier about the different thoughts and stuff that I have going through my mind, at this point in time, you're hearing a lot of stuff. You hear a lot of people talking about rugged capitalism, things of that nature. And I'm all for capitalism. Here's the caveat that and they're talking about, well, do we want increased regulation into the industry? A lot of people are saying no. You have people that are staunchly against having any more intervention as far as regulation when it comes down to the industry. I'm on the stance of there has to be some type of regulation that comes in, because apparently we industries don't do a very good job self certifying and self-regulating.
Never in the history of capitalism has industry done a great job policing themselves. They don't.
And if there was a great example of that, I would be all for it. But here's my stance. And I know that we are, quote unquote, if you're operating on the spot market, you are contracted and you read contracts and you agree to contracts and things of that nature. But here is the truth of the matter. That sounds really well, but from a real world application, contracts are basically, from a carrier standpoint, if you're operating on that market, those contracts are basically shoved down your throat. You don't have any negotiating when it comes to especially now with the advent of My Carrier Package, RMIS, Highway, all of that stuff. All of those contracts are pre-filled out. You don't have an opportunity to strike through anything like the old days and try to negotiate any of that stuff out. The best thing that you might be able to do is to be able to get the broker or someone to agree to a rule circular where you have your rates in there for detention and layover and all that type of stuff. That might be the best that you might be able to do, and even getting that approved might still present some challenges. So when they say that all of this stuff is negotiable or whatever, that's very, very loose term. That's just something, I think that's, from my experience, that has just been a bunch of lip service. Because like I said, from the standpoint of small guys, small carriers, you don't have an opportunity to negotiate any of that stuff. It's take it or leave it. You're tonal rates of a $150 layover rates of 250. That is crazy. And this is the only industry where the service provider gets dictated terms as to what they should accept. And so there definitely has to be some type of regulation that comes in that can kind of level the playing field, because all of the power, unfortunately, is in the hands of the shippers and the brokers. The carrier, the people that actually provide the service, have very little to no leverage at all when it comes to providing adequate service. And
I will say, Rico, I got to interject. There is one case where you can, and that is when you're going on the spot board, especially and I know the market's gotten a little bit better, but maybe not this week, but it's gotten better. It's not as bad as it was, but you still don't have the opportunity when you go out to a strange area, you've never been there before, you don't go there very often, and you need a load out of Louisville or Nashville to get you back towards home. You have to go to whoever's got something, and you're at there. You go with your hat in your hand, begging for a load. Please, sir, give me a load, and it's on their terms. You can change this if you have carved out relationships with a couple of brokers on a dumbbell where you're constantly dealing with them, and they go, geez, I want to give this load to Rico. I know that my former company had carriers that they dealt with every single day, and they were able to carve out separate, all sorts of different deals for waiting time, because they became they were part of that contract.
Right.
And we knew they were, and we knew they would do a good job. And they just got it every single week. They got those they got them every single day. That's who we went to. It never went on a load board, unless, God forbid, it was a Friday afternoon and more loads were thrown at us, or one of their trucks couldn't make it. Then we would put it on a load board. But that's where, and you and I have been harping about this for years. Stay away from, I hate to say it, guys, the toilet of the trucking industry is the spot board.
Yes. And I think that, and here's why I say about the regulation aspect of it as well, because there have been, and that's the part of the thing with the court case that's coming down today. A lot of the stuff that we have going on, we deserve the freight industry that we've gotten, and our freight industry is absolutely in the toilet right now. They are trying to, as they say, put the genie back in the bottle to a certain degree, but we have allowed people that come to this country that don't understand the language, can't speak the language. I've seen, I think I may have sent you something yesterday. There was one individual that is responsible for over 605 different companies. How in the hell? I don't understand how this stuff has been has gotten through the cracks this long. And I am of the opinion that if we take this thing all the way back, and I think I may have made this point before, when we take this thing all the way back and really start trying to dissect this thing, I think you'll start to see and correlate. That's when that's kind of the result of all of the problems that we have had, because I look back to when we started really seeing a bunch of these nuclear verdicts and everything of that nature, and you started seeing a bunch of attorneys around the nation advertising for big truck accidents, so on and so forth. And I think that they started to see this safety concern and saw the ability to profit off of it for their bottom line and for the people that were being injured long before the trucking industry may have gotten wind of it or seen how bad it was. Because for a lot of times, I remember us just talking back and complaining about, insurance rates keep going up. Well, the insurance rates keep, because you got people that they were trying to insure, and they, what I'm saying, and you put all of us into the barrel. It's crazy how, like I said, I think that if you really start to go back and start to really connect the dots, this thing started years and years ago. This was not an overnight sensation.
Oh, no, it was actually, it really started back 46 years ago when Jimmy Carter, I'm not blaming him, may he rest in peace. It's the one good thing he did was he deregulated trucking because you know what we were doing trucking before, but it wasn't totally legal.
Right.
Okay, and he legalized it, and guys like you, lots of people like you, were able to do very well in a deregulated society. You were able to bring out your entrepreneurial skills with trucks. You talk to my buddy Ronnie, who grew up in an area where he had to get authority,
Mm-hmm.
and he built a fleet of 400 trucks in a regulated society, a regulated economy, and a regulated business, and that protected him for the first 40 years of his business. He was able to, or 30 years of the business, he was able to build around that. And once he had the business going, he was able to continue and keep growing it. And then all of a sudden, one day, they just came in. They said, "There's no more laws here." It's like all of a sudden allowing 3-year-olds to have driver's licenses and,
Right.
and, and no age to drink. So you get a bunch of 3-year-olds getting tank up in a bar and then going out driving cars. That's what we've done with trucks. But most of us didn't realize how bad it was because it wasn't quite in our world. And then bit by bit, it got bad. You had these people come in from all over, not just as truck drivers, but as fleet operators. And they didn't even live in this country. They
Right.
didn't live in your country. They lived in some third world country overseas. And there's not just one country, there's several, both in Europe and parts of Asia and Africa too. And away they went. And we couldn't run trucking companies in Europe the way
No.
these guys run them here, or maybe we could in Asia. I don't think we would survive very well without reading the language. I don't think we could drive it between two of us. We could drive a truck in these countries, but we allowed it here, and it's gotten so bad now. The feds had to step in. They had no choice because it was going to. People were getting killed. We took the trucking industry, we made it into one of the most dangerous industries in the world.
Well, now I don't think we can go 1 week without hearing of one incident pertaining to these non-domiciled or non-English speaking drivers that can't read. I think I sent you the video, and I'm pretty sure everybody has seen the video by now of the truck going the wrong direction down the highway. They finally caught the guy. They put him. They supposedly suspended his CDL, but it was a team operation. So the guy in the bunk was just able to jump in the bunk, and they were able to keep on going right on down the road. So who's to say that once they get out of sight or purview of the authorities that let's get them back in the put them back in the seat of the driver's seat.
Well,
There
it's
has
funny.
to be.
You and I would not do that because we have too much to lose.
Yeah,
But
there
these
has
guys,
to be, and that's the thing about it with these chameleon carriers. If they get popped on something like that, well, we'll just go ahead and move it over to the other authority that we got over here, and we'll shut business down on this one right here. We don't know who these people are. We don't know how to hold anybody accountable, really. You got people that put on as officers of their company. The email addresses is, I think, WTF FMCSA or something.
yeah, I saw this little storefront and it had like 120 trucks running out of it. All sorts of craziness. I attended it was one of those companies that was on that list that you sent me of the man that had 650. Well, one of his companies was up here in Canada, and I went there a week and a half ago on behalf of a trustee in bankruptcy, and the bank had lent the man $10 million on a building plus some other money, and the guy's been out of his building for 6 months, but the bank didn't know it, so the bank is at fault. They never used to do stuff like that.
I just it boggles the mind, some of the stuff that some people have been able to get away with.
Yeah.
And how our industry has allowed this thing to happen. And like I said, I personally don't think I'm not a big fan of government regulation, but like I said, there has to be someone that has the ability to rein this stuff in, because industry is not going to. You got the big the big haves are not going to allow the little have-nots to play on equal footing.
Of course not. And we're not on equal footings, and we never will be. And in fairness to, they can do stuff we can't do, and we can do stuff they can't do. They have, remember something, they've got a lot of overhead. They can buy a truck for a fraction of what you and I can buy a truck for.
Right.
They can buy fuel cheaper, and tires and everything, every other component on that truck. But it's not enough to make up for their extra costs because they've got those layers of management and those terminals and everything else where, if you want to, you can change your oil in your driveway.
Right.
It doesn't take you very long. Where these guys have a shop and they've got a vice president, a director of maintenance and all that on top of the mechanic. So really, their oil change costs them a lot more money than it costs you.
Absolutely. So I was just saying, we got to get this thing under control. And I think that while we have the opportunity, things are kind of swinging, the pendulum is swinging back towards the favor of the carriers and the motor carriers and the service providers. Right. While that pendulum is swinging, and Chuck, I'm asking you not from a perspective of theory, but I want a real tangible, if you can. How is the best way? What would be the best way for smaller guys to make sure that they are, when you're negotiating, if you have someone that is on the spot market, how can they make sure that they are negotiating so that they can now start to try to get paid for their detention, for their layovers? Or is that something that you just still need to try to price into your all-in bid rate?
Unfortunately, if you are dealing with the one-offs, okay, so you've never been to, you've never been to South Dakota before and you're trying to get a load out of there, there's nothing, you've got a real disadvantage because you're fighting with everybody else that wants to grab that load out of South Dakota. So you have no bargaining power. You have no negotiating power. If you want, give yourself the negotiating power by working in a tight area and know who you're dealing with. That starts giving, like, you're dealing, I know lately you've been running a lot to Florida and probably for the same people. So I would presume they're getting to know Rico and they're going, you know what? This guy makes it real easy. He checks in on time. He delivers on time. Let's just give it to him. I know he's $20 more, $50 more. And then you say to them, listen, guys, I'm glad to do this, but I can't sit there all day waiting for the load to cool down. I need an extra $500 because unless you send me in the next day, knowing the load is cool. That's the other way we can do. Work with them. But you have to let them know what you can't accept.
And so when you're basically, what you're saying to me as well is that whenever you're dealing on the spot market, it just kind of is what it is. And you got to make sure that you're prepared to deal with the consequences of whatever you bargain for when you're on that market.
Rico, I've said it before. I'll say it again. When you're dealing in that big spot market, you are standing at the edge of the riverbank with a net. There's 500 other fishermen. Somebody else fish, and everybody puts their dip net in at the same time trying to catch that fish. Whatever fish it is, you're going to eat it. And that's a spot market. I don't know why anybody wants to play in it.
I get it. I think that it comes from a lot of people still are delving into it because a lot of people are still just really intimidated on trying to make calls. People are they don't necessarily have a problem of, they know what the broker has to offer because the load is posted, but they may have a little bit of an intimidation factor when it comes to approaching big business or dealing with a business to business application.
Yes, and some of the most successful single owner operators I've seen are those ones. Those owner-operators that have.
Excuse me for a second, Chuck.
Okay, go ahead. You good now? Or,
No, go. I'm gonna step away for a second.
okay, no problem. I think the best scenes I've seen so far are when you don't have somebody that is a really good negotiator on the phone, then when they have their wife or their daughter negotiating on their behalf. They do the best job. And I think that if you have somebody at home, maybe your wife could help you, or your daughter, or your son, or your mother, whoever, and they could make those calls to the brokers for you, and maybe they're going to fight for that nickel that you won't fight, because it's all about nickels here, and the nickels add up to dimes. It's unfortunately, but we are in the nickel and dime business. They add up. Uh, I have to excuse Rico for a minute. He's at a site there loading or unloading. I think he's loading up. They must have needed him to move his truck or get paperwork. But yeah, certainly into some different times. And when you are, I was just telling people that the best way to handle negotiating sometimes is not to, and to let.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay, if you have a wife or a girlfriend or a daughter or son that can call the brokers for you while you're out on the road and negotiate on your behalf, those are some of the best negotiators I've dealt with.
You know, it's amazing sometimes, especially with a female. And
Right?
not to sound sexist or anything like that, but man, I tell you, I've seen females even on the broker side or even on the carrier side. I've seen females be able to negotiate rates and you're like, how in the hell were you able to pull that off? And I guess the sweet sound of a woman's voice sometimes.
I've seen it enough times with my own wife in the last 48 years, where I've watched her. I will shut up. I know when I'm beat. I'll let her do the negotiating because she's a better negotiator than I am sometimes, and she walks away more than I would have walked away with.
Yeah, it's wild. It is wild. You have to excuse me for a second, Chuck. I got to move out of this door.
No problem. Told you guys he was loading.
Live trucking at its finest. So I'm thinking back, and I'm just thinking about all of the issues and things that, like I said, that we talked about before. And my concern is that when it comes to self-policing, that's the reason why I don't think that we can self-police is because never underestimate the next man's greed. And unfortunately, I think that puts us at a paradox to where it's hard to just do good, solid business. There's no necessarily doing things the right way or doing things fairly unless you have that relationship. You can't expect, you know, a lot of guys may come from the perspective of, well, if you're out and you have a tire that's blown and you got to go buy a tire. Well, you got a bunch of people that you can buy a tire from, but that service provider that when you come time to put that tire on, you got to agree to what it is that their labor rate is, and you have to agree to whatever the terms of their insurance or whatever. We have that ability, but that ability is all but taken aback from us because we don't have a direct contract or direct connection with the person that is providing the load, the shipper, so to
Right.
speak.
With the end customer.
Right.
But even if you did and you had a direct contact with a produce shipper and you said, I want $500 extra because I had to wait all day for the berries to cool down, they tell you to go jump in the lake. We're not paying $500. We've never paid anybody $500 in 75 years. Why are we going to pay that, Rico? That's what you're going to get.
And that's what I'm saying. That there goes the inability to fairly negotiate is what I'm saying.
That's right. Because the shippers themselves, I've dealt with enough shippers that just tell you when you walk in, You tell them what you're going to do, and they go, by the way, you've given me this thing of ancillary charges. I don't pay any of those. I'm not, what, if it takes, we had an LTL customer like that once that wouldn't pay anything. And when my son Doc walked into the business, this company is giving me $3 million a year in LTL business. And my son walked in, did the math on it, came to me the first week, and he said, these guys are costing us a fortune. We're not making any money from them. We'll make more money without them. I go, it's $3 million worth of work. Doesn't matter. It's costing you 3.2.
Wow.
And you know what? We got rid of them, made more money.
And that's then you got to be able to be willing to make those choices.
Sometimes, Rico, we're too close to it. Okay.
Right.
We bring on the customer. We bring on the broker ourselves. We take it to heart. That's our customer, our relationship. You don't want to do anything to jeopardize it. Meanwhile, they're walking all over you.
Absolutely.
So you have to have the wherewithal to stand up to them and say, listen, I'm here to move your goods, but I got to make money. If I can't make money, it's no good to me. And it isn't.
And for far too long, that's what happened with this whole thing when we allowed the glut of people to come into the industry, the non-English proficient individuals, the chameleon carriers. We allowed them to come in. We allowed them to upset the balance of our industry where the supply was way out of whack from the demand. And drove prices down. You had people that were doing stuff illegally that drove rates all the way down to the basement. Whenever you have big proficient carriers that have long-standing history in this industry of being some of the top trucking companies, and they are losing money on every load that they pull, something is off.
Yeah. These companies have been around 100 years, some of them, and they've always made money until recently. And now they're not even coming near breaking even. And that's because we've had an industry that was very, very controlled. I don't think most of our listeners have a clue how controlled trucking was prior to deregulation. You would be licensed by the commodity or the customer or the route. And if you wanted to expand your business, you had to have a license to expand that business. You didn't just go out and buy 10 trucks. It was and the reason apparently way back that they decided to regulate trucking, it was twofold. The first fold was somebody realized very early on that this was an industry that was going to require a hell of a lot of metal, a hell of a lot of rubber, a hell of a lot of wood back then because you had wooden stake trucks and things like that. A lot of labor and a lot of fossil fuel. And the geniuses in Washington, D.C., and I mean that sincerely, and in Canada decided, you know what? We can't let this thing run wild. This thing needs to be protected. There's too much at stake here. And they started to say, okay, Rico, you want to run from Atlanta to Miami, that's fine, but you can't run from Miami to Jacksonville and deliver in Jacksonville. You don't have a license in Jacksonville. We'll give you one for Miami because we need that lane served. And then your next neighbor said, well, let me serve Jacksonville. And then all of a sudden you got together with your next door neighbor and you say, well, you're going to Jacksonville, it's on the way. Why don't I take your Jacksonville, buy you out? And that's what happened. And then you took the lid off everything, let everybody do whatever the hell they wanted to. And it's much worse than we ever thought it would be. Now you got people coming in from all over the world to get a piece of this action.
Yeah. And I'm going to be interested to see the court decision, whatever comes out of the courts today. I'm definitely going to take a little bit of time to sit down on our next show and try to get and we may sit down together and formulate some stuff because I definitely want to try to put together some points.
Which court decision is this that we're talking about? Lila's Law?
There's I think a C.H. Robinson TQL case that there's a decision that's supposed to be coming today, I think, off of that. As far as I think it has something to deal with the broker liability. because they hired what it stems from, if I remember correctly. I think it was TQL hired some driver, some carrier. The carrier went out and had an accident and killed someone, and they are trying to go back up the line, the chain of command, because they're saying that TQL uh, kind of, from what I understand, I could be wrong, so I'm not sure. Allegedly, let me put that caveat on it.
Right.
Allegedly, I think that the driver that they hired, they put him on a load that wasn't for. I think it might have been a team load,
Right. It was a
and it,
team. That's right. It was
and
a
and
team.
and, and it was a single driver, and
Yeah.
they should have known. They should have been properly vetted, and so they're saying that it wasn't vetted and that they knew what was going on and they didn't really give a damn. They just wanted to move that the price that they wanted to move for, and so now that's from what I understand. That's the broker liability situation is coming down. So it should be that court decision supposed to be
Well,
later on today.
if you remember, C.H. Robinson had that famous case, and I think it cost
Yes.
them $52 million. They appealed it. I think they eventually, but it still cost them tens of millions of dollars to fight it.
Yes.
And that was same. Basically, it was a tired driver. It'll be, you know what? This is why we have judges. They're going to listen to all sides, and we have to respect judges' opinions. They can't be questioned.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see. So I want to try to, between now and by the time our next show airs, try to get together some stuff. We'll sit down and maybe hammer out some stuff. I like to be a little bit more concise about what it is, get my thoughts together, and try to connect some dots on some of this stuff so that we can have a better presentation to our audience.
And we'll have, you know what? We'll certainly know a lot more about the case and what the judges ruled on and what merits they ruled for or against.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll just put a pin in it for now, and we'll table it, and we'll come back, hopefully, God willing, next week, and we will have a little bit more information to share, a little bit more details to go into, and of course, we definitely have our opinions of it all.
Well, opinions.
So until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, we want you guys to continue to stay safe out there, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and God willing, we'll talk at the same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch on the flip flop. Be safe.